Okay, so this time, you guys sent in a really interesting one. Uh, Elvis Presley, but not in the way you might think.
Yeah.
We're looking at Elvis through the Enneagram.
We are going to analyze Elvis's controversial manager, Colonel Tom Parker, through the personality typing system.
That's right.
Yeah,
And get this, the source material claims that Parker was a self-preservation 7.
that's right.
So instead of just like looking at what he did,
Mm.
we're going to look at the motivations and the fears that might have been driving him, kind of behind the scenes.
Behind the curtain, exactly.
Yeah.
So for those unfamiliar with the Enneagram, it's a system of 9 interconnected personality types, each with their own kind of core fears and desires and ways that they see the world.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for our purposes today, the key takeaway about self-preservation 7s is that they're pretty resourceful.
Yeah.
They crave security. They
Yeah.
crave enjoyment, and they will strategize, and they will maneuver to get what they want.
They're clever.
That's
Right. And the source material argues that Parker's entire approach to relationships was built around this personality type.
Uh-huh.
He famously referred to his network as his family,
Okay.
but it was far from a traditional warm and fuzzy kind of family.
It was more like a strategic alliance.
Yeah, absolutely. And the source material kind of breaks down this family into a few really fascinating components.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Okay, so first you have this army of industry insiders, lawyers, promoters, agents, you name it.
Okay.
And they were fiercely loyal to Parker and by extension to Elvis. But their primary role was to protect Parker's interests
Interesting.
and to ensure his continued success.
So it wasn't just about protecting Elvis, it was about protecting the whole operation with Parker at the center.
Precisely, yes. And then there's the fatherly role that Parker cultivated with Elvis. He kind of took this, young star under his wing and provided guidance and support, but also exerted a significant amount of control.
The source material argues that this control went beyond the typical manager-client boundaries.
That's right. Parker frequently justified questionable decisions. He would say that he was Elvis's protector. He's just looking out for his best interests.
Right.
But of course, those interests often aligned very conveniently with his own.
Which makes you wonder if Elvis ever felt truly independent or if he was always under Parker's thumb.
Right. It's an interesting question, and one that the source material sort of doesn't shy away from.
Yeah.
And then finally, there's the transactional nature of Parker's family.
Okay.
Loyalty was rewarded handsomely, but betrayal was met with swift and often brutal consequences.
Sounds like a page right out of The Godfather.
It does,
Yeah.
yes. There are certainly some parallels there. Parker understood the power of incentives and wasn't afraid to use them to maintain control and ensure compliance. And this, the source argues, goes right back to that self-preservation 7 drive.
It's a drive for security. He wasn't interested in warm, fuzzy feelings or like genuine connection. He was building a system designed to protect his own interests and guarantee his own comfort.
It's all about me, me, me.
Yeah, even if it meant sacrificing others along the way.
That's a pretty harsh assessment, but
Yeah,
it's a perspective the source puts forward,
right.
and one that we need to consider as we delve deeper into Parker's actions and motivations.
Let's talk about Parker's opportunism,
Yes.
which the source really lays out as like a key trait of the self-preservation 7. The source material is packed with examples, especially when it comes to Elvis's film career.
Right. One of the most striking examples is his relentless pursuit of lucrative but really kind of formulaic Elvis films, even if they weren't exactly cinematic masterpieces. He saw these films as cash cows. He was all about quick profits over artistic exploration or even long-term career growth for Elvis.
And the source material mentions Parker's famous quote, "We don't make movies to win awards in Cannes, we make them to make money."
Exactly. Yeah. He was laser focused on maximizing his returns.
Yeah.
And in the early days, that strategy undeniably contributed to Elvis's meteoric rise.
Yeah.
But did this relentless opportunism ultimately benefit Elvis in the long run?
It's a good question.
That's a question we'll be exploring further.
And it's not like this drive for profit stopped after Elvis died. Didn't Parker continue to capitalize on Elvis's image?
Oh, he absolutely did. He kept the Elvis brand alive and thriving, generating significant revenue through merchandising, licensing deals, and posthumous album releases.
It makes you think, where's the line between savvy business and exploitation, especially when you're dealing with a dead artist's legacy?
Right. That's such a complex issue, and one that continues to be debated even today.
Yeah.
On the one hand, Parker was undeniably a shrewd businessman who understood how to build and maintain a successful brand.
But on the other hand, his relentless pursuit of profit, even after Elvis's death, raises questions about his motivations.
Yeah.
Did he truly have Elvis's best interests at heart?
It's a nuanced situation, and it's important to consider the context of the time and the dynamics of their relationship. But it's also really crucial to acknowledge the potential for exploitation,
Right.
especially when power imbalances are at play.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about Colonel Parker's more, shall we say, extravagant side.
Oh,
The source material describes him as a bona fide hedonist,
Yeah.
with a penchant for gambling and a seemingly insatiable appetite for wealth.
this is where things get really interesting. The source links this behavior directly to the Self-Preservation 7's deep-seated fear of scarcity. So Parker's indulgence in sensory pleasures, his love of the high life, might have been a way to compensate for a deep-rooted fear of ending up destitute.
So his love of Vegas wasn't just about the glitz and glamour, it was a deeper psychological thing.
The source suggests that it was a way to quell those anxieties, to surround himself with abundance as a shield against that fear of lack. And it wasn't just material wealth either. He craved attention, adoration, the constant stimulation of being surrounded by excitement and excess.
It's like he was constantly trying to outrun some inner emptiness,
Right.
filling the void with whatever thrills or possessions he could acquire.
That's exactly it. It's a fascinating psychological puzzle.
Yeah.
And the Enneagram offers such a unique perspective on how these underlying fears and desires might have kind of manifested in Parker's behavior.
Wow. So behind that larger-than-life persona, there was a lot more going on beneath the surface.
A lot more going on, absolutely. And speaking of persona, the source argues that Parker's outward charm, his very affable personality, was actually a carefully calculated tool,
Really?
a tool for manipulation. He used it to gain trust, disarm potential rivals, and ultimately get what he wanted.
Okay. Now that's a bit chilling. So you're saying his whole good old boy image was a carefully constructed facade.
Well, let's consider this. The man wasn't even a real colonel.
Oh, right.
His real name was Andreas Cornelis van Kuyk, and he was an immigrant from the Netherlands who, for reasons still shrouded in mystery, completely fabricated his identity when he came to America.
Wait, he made up his entire backstory.
He did. It's a story straight out of a Hollywood movie. And it perfectly exemplifies the Self-Preservation 7's potential for deception and image crafting. They're masters at creating the persona they believe will lead to success and security.
So Colonel Tom Parker was basically a carefully crafted character designed to project an image of authority and trustworthiness.
That's the theory that the source puts forward, and it raises some intriguing questions about authenticity, the nature of identity, and the lengths people will go to achieve their goals. But more importantly, it makes you wonder what Elvis really knew about the man he entrusted with his career.
That's a great point, and it leads us perfectly into our next discussion about the ethics of Parker's financial practices. The source material paints a pretty damning picture, suggesting he wasn't exactly known for fair dealings.
No, not really. His contracts often heavily favored him over Elvis, and his financial dealings were notoriously opaque.
Wait, so even during Elvis's peak, Parker was allegedly siphoning off a disproportionate share of the profits.
That appears to be the case. The source claims that Parker's contracts were notoriously one-sided, ensuring that he received a much larger cut of Elvis's earnings than was typical for managers at the time. And he was incredibly secretive about his financial dealings, so it's difficult to track exactly where the money was going.
That makes you wonder about the level of trust or perhaps naivete that existed in their relationship.
Yeah.
Did Elvis simply trust Parker implicitly, or was he just unaware of the extent of the financial imbalance?
That's a question that continues to be debated by Elvis historians and fans alike. But what's undeniable is that Parker's relentless pursuit of personal gain, even at the potential expense of his client, aligns with the core motivations of a Self-Preservation 7.
Their need for security, their fear of scarcity can sometimes lead to behaviors that prioritize self-preservation above, ethical considerations.
That's right.
And this leads us to the central question that we're going to be exploring in the next part of our deep dive. Did Colonel Tom Parker's personality, particularly his Self-Preservation 7 tendencies, ultimately help or hinder Elvis Presley's career?
Yeah.
It's a complex question with no easy answers, but by examining Parker's actions through the lens of the Enneagram, we can gain a deeper understanding of the forces that shaped one of music history's most fascinating and controversial partnerships. Join us after the break as we continue to unravel this intriguing story.
Welcome back. So before the break, we're getting into some potentially shady dealings on Colonel Tom Parker's part, especially when it comes to finances. And it seems like his Enneagram type, the Self-Preservation 7, might hold some clues.
Yeah, I think it does. Remember, this type is all about securing their own well-being, sometimes at the expense of others. They crave stability, they crave enjoyment, and they tend to be very pragmatic in how they view the world. So you're saying that Parker's potentially, questionable business dealings might not have just been him being a tough negotiator. There could be like a deeper psychological reason.
The source material seems to think so. It suggests that his actions stem from this deep-seated fear of ending up back where he started, destitute and powerless. And that fear, combined with the Self-Preservation 7's drive to, acquire resources and to maximize enjoyment, could explain his relentless focus on profit and control.
It makes you wonder if he saw Elvis more as a means to an end, a way to kind of achieve his own financial security and escape the anxieties of his past.
Yeah, and that's a really astute observation. And it's worth noting that Parker's early life was shrouded in mystery. He immigrated to the United States from the Netherlands under, shall we say, dubious circumstances,
Yeah.
even fabricating his entire identity to create a more advantageous persona for himself.
Right, the whole colonel persona was a total fabrication. He wasn't a military officer at all.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Exactly. And this act of reinvention, of kind of shedding his past and constructing this new identity, it really speaks volumes, I think, about his desire for control and his willingness to manipulate perceptions to achieve his goals. This is a core Self-Preservation 7 drive to kind of shape the world to their liking.
I'm starting to see how his past experiences combined with this personality type could have really contributed to this relentless drive for success and his, shall we say, flexible approach to ethical boundaries.
It's a fascinating case study in how our personal histories and our psychological predispositions can kind of intersect to shape our choices and actions.
But the big question remains, did all of this ultimately help or hurt Elvis? Did Parker's management, which seems to have been driven by his own needs and fears, did that ultimately benefit Elvis's career, or did it stifle his potential?
That's the million-dollar question. On the one hand, you can't deny Parker's business acumen and marketing genius.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy propelled Elvis to superstardom. He made him a global icon through really shrewd media manipulation and just relentless promotion.
He was a master at creating buzz, and he understood the power of image and branding long before it became, commonplace in the music industry.
Absolutely. And Elvis benefited immensely from that early exposure and the carefully crafted image that Parker cultivated. But the source material also kind of suggests a darker side to this equation.
You mean like how Parker pushed Elvis into those formulaic cookie-cutter films?
Yes, and his resistance to Elvis touring internationally. Parker really feared losing control, both creatively and financially, if he allowed Elvis to kind of venture too far from his watchful eye. He preferred the familiar territory of Las Vegas residencies and those very lucrative but predictable movie deals.
So in a way, Parker's need for control, which we can link back to his Self-Preservation 7 tendencies, might have actually inadvertently held Elvis back from exploring different artistic avenues.
It's possible, yeah, it's possible. But it's also worth remembering that the music industry landscape was very different back then. The concept of a global superstar was still in its infancy, and the risks associated with international touring were significant.
That's true. So maybe Parker was just being pragmatic, trying to protect Elvis from potential pitfalls.
Perhaps. But regardless of his motivations, the fact remains that Elvis never had the opportunity to experience the global adulation that later artists like the Beatles enjoyed.
It really makes you wonder what could have been.
It does. It does. And it highlights the complex interplay between a manager's personality and an artist's ambitions, and the unpredictable nature of the entertainment industry as a whole.
It's a reminder that even the most successful partnerships aren't without their challenges, and that navigating the complexities of human relationships, especially those driven by ambition and the pursuit of success, is, it's never a straightforward path.
It's messy.
It's messy.
Yeah.
It's very messy.
But that's what makes this whole deep dive so fascinating, right?
Yeah.
We're exploring the human element behind the legend, the interplay of personality, ambition that shaped one of music's most iconic figures. Exactly. And it's not just about Elvis and Parker. This kind of exploration invites us to reflect on our own motivations, our own fears and desires, and how they might be influencing our choices, our interactions with others.
You're right. Understanding the Enneagram, even on a basic level, can offer really valuable insights into our own behavior and the behavior of the people around us. It's about recognizing patterns, understanding motivations, and maybe gaining a little more empathy for, the complexities of human nature.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Now, before we move on to the final part of our exploration, I think it's important to acknowledge that while Parker's management style might have had its drawbacks, he was also fiercely loyal to Elvis in his own way.
Interesting. So you're saying that despite his focus on, profit and control, he genuinely cared for Elvis's well-being.
The source material suggests that while Parker's actions were often driven by self-interest, he also saw Elvis's success as intrinsically linked to his own. He was invested in protecting Elvis's image, shielding him from negative publicity, ensuring his continued popularity.
So it was a complex relationship, a mix of self-serving ambition and genuine concern, all kind of intertwined with the unique dynamics of their personalities.
Precisely. Yeah. And that complexity is what makes this whole story so compelling. But let's not forget the bigger picture here. Parker wasn't just a manager, he was a pioneer. He really revolutionized the music industry. He transformed the way artists were marketed and promoted.
He saw the potential of mass media and merchandising before anyone else, and he capitalized on it brilliantly.
Yeah, he understood that entertainment was as much about business as it was about art, and he wasn't afraid to push the boundaries of what was considered acceptable at the time. His legacy is one of innovation, of breaking down barriers, and really of creating a blueprint for the modern music industry that we still see in play today.
That's a powerful point. It's easy to get caught up in the ethical debates surrounding Parker's actions, but you can't deny his impact on the evolution of music and celebrity.
You can't. That's right. And that's what we'll be exploring in the final part of our deep dive. We'll examine that lasting legacy of Colonel Tom Parker, the innovator, the manipulator, the man who really helped shape the landscape of modern entertainment.
It's a legacy that's filled with contradictions, but one that continues to fascinate and provoke debate even today. Join us after the break as we delve into the final chapter of this captivating story.
All right, we're back, and it's time to tackle the big question. What is the lasting impact of Colonel Tom Parker? I mean, he was a complex character, there's no doubt about it.
That's an understatement. He was a visionary, a really shrewd businessman, but also, as we've discussed, someone whose methods often raise some serious ethical questions.
Yeah, a real mixed bag.
It is.
But, looking back, it's clear that Parker really revolutionized music management. He grasped the power of marketing and merchandising way before they became, industry standards. He did. He saw Elvis not just as a talented singer, but as a brand, a global phenomenon just waiting to happen. And he really orchestrated Elvis's rise with a level of media savvy that was just unheard of at the time.
It's true. I mean, think about it. The carefully orchestrated television appearances, the strategic movie deals, even the merchandise. It was like a full-blown multimedia assault on pop culture.
It was. It was. He created the blueprint for what we now recognize as the modern pop star. And it's not just about fame, it's about the whole business empire that can be built around a charismatic personality.
And yet, there's this nagging question. Did Parker's relentless pursuit of profit ultimately overshadow Elvis's artistic potential? Did he sacrifice some of Elvis's artistic integrity on the altar of commercial success?
That's a valid question. And it's one that, Elvis biographers and music critics still debate to this day. There's no denying that Parker pushed Elvis into all those, really formulaic Hollywood films, often at the expense of more challenging roles that might have, shown Elvis's acting talents.
Yeah. And what about Elvis wanting to tour internationally? Parker totally shut that down, kept Elvis largely confined to the United States.
He did. And the source material suggests that this is because Parker was really afraid of losing control, creatively and financially. If he allowed Elvis to venture too far from his watchful eye, he preferred the familiar territory of the Vegas residencies and those lucrative but predictable movie deals.
So in a way, Parker's need for control, which again we can link back to those self-preservation 7 tendencies, may have inadvertently held Elvis back, from exploring different artistic avenues.
It's possible. It's totally possible. But it's also important to remember that the music industry landscape was so different back then. I mean, the concept of a global superstar was still really in its infancy, and the risks associated with international touring were significant.
That's true. So maybe Parker was just trying to be pragmatic. Maybe he was just trying to protect Elvis from potential pitfalls.
Maybe. Maybe. But, regardless of his motivations, the fact remains that Elvis never had the opportunity to experience the global adulation that, later artists like the Beatles enjoyed.
It makes you wonder what could have been.
It does. It
Yeah.
really does. And it highlights the really complex interplay between a manager's personality and an artist's ambitions and, just the unpredictable nature of the entertainment industry itself.
It's a good reminder that even the most successful partnerships, aren't without their challenges, and that navigating the complexities of human relationships, especially those that are driven by, ambition, the pursuit of success, it's rarely a straightforward path.
It's messy.
It's messy. Yeah.
Very messy.
So we're left with a complicated legacy. I mean, on one hand, Colonel Tom Parker was a visionary. He helped shape the modern music industry. On the other hand, his methods were often questionable. And his need for control might have actually stifled Elvis's full artistic potential.
Right. It's a fascinating paradox,
Mm.
and one that ultimately leaves us with more questions than answers.
That's the beauty of exploring this stuff, though, right? I mean, it's not about arriving at definitive conclusions. It's about engaging in these kinds of discussions, thinking about different perspectives, and deepening our understanding of the forces that really shape our world.
I completely agree. I hope this deep dive has kind of encouraged you to think about the Enneagram, not just as a way to label personalities, but as a tool for understanding human behavior and motivation in all its complexity.
Yeah, messiness and all. Because ultimately, we're all navigating our fears, our desires, our ambitions. And understanding those forces within ourselves and others can lead to, more compassionate and maybe even more successful relationships.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, on that note, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Elvis Presley and the enigmatic figure of Colonel Tom Parker.
Until next time.